So Audrey Galex. Audrey Galex hails from the shores of the Mississippi River in Illinois, where her beloved grandmother Sugie wove stories from her ancestral shtetl Noroditch in the Ukraine. She is an introvert whose hobby it is to take pictures of abandoned mattresses. She's still planning on starting an all-girl woman band called Spinster Debutantes, not for the music, but for the fabulous costuming. She is particularly fond of carrot cake and apple pie. Audrey Galex, numbers.
Amidbar. Well, every now and then, I crave an adventure, particularly if it's a walk in the woods or a hike up a mountain. You know, sometimes you just got to get out of the city, away from your phones and all this. Well, this adventure takes place about 30 years ago. See, when I heard my childhood friend Lauren had a few extra days in Atlanta after a corporate photo gig, I had to see if she was up for this adventure. I mean, I figured she was the perfect person. She was the kind of person who did triathlons, hang gliding, cancer walks, hikes alone in the Colorado mountains. And I knew she would be just the kind of person who would push me if I slowed down, got tired. Well, told her about it and she was up for it. So I arranged for the two of us to head up to the Nantahala Outdoor Center on the Friday morning. I'd been there once, BC, before children, with some CNN buddies. We water rafted, had a blast. So I figured Lauren and I would go on this hiking trip, and then we'd go on a rafting trip, and then we'd hike, and then we'd head back to Atlanta to, my husband and our 2-year-old daughter, Jan, and Lauren, I'd put her back on the plane to Chicago. So the drive up that morning to North Carolina was more or less uneventful. I mean, there was just one kind of odd and slightly uncomfortable occurrence. So we walked into a Waffle House and we're just going to grab a bite, some orange juice or something. But we got just a couple of steps in when, oh my God, I mean, she was so loud. She's like, I've got to get out of here. I just cannot stand the stench of grease. It was just overwhelming. And we walked out. Well, a couple hours later, we get to the mountains, threw our suitcases in the room and headed over to the river. But truth be told, I really cannot recall much about the rafting, and I guess it was good because neither of us ended up being flung overboard into the rapids. And well, I guess maybe I just don't remember because the events of the next day so overshadow it. But that night we ate in the center's restaurant, and, greens from their on-site organic farm, and I guess we slept well. I really don't remember that much, but the next day we woke up and we decided to go on this hike, but just for a couple hours because, we decided on the way back to Atlanta, we'd stop in a discount mall, do a little shopping, sounded reasonable. So we both put on, shorts, t-shirt, tennis shoes. We had our water bottles filled with apples, threw them in little backpacks, loaded up the car with our bags, and we set off. Well, we found a trail. It had a sign, pulled into the parking lot there, and put our backpacks on and started off. And, maybe it was like 9 in the morning. And honest to goodness, to this day, I cannot even recall which trail it was. But I do recall that it was beautiful, probably like May, and the weather was gorgeous, not too hot, not too cold, just perfect for a hike with 2 old friends. And, oh, by the way, let me just share this. We had met when we were in middle school, probably about, when we were 11, at a BBYO, B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, weekend at Camp Henry Horner. I just love that name, Henry Horner. You never forget that. And so we'd known each other for a while, and, we'd had our ups and downs. She always had kind of an edge to her, but, I kind of forgave her. I mean, during our college years, she'd gone through some tough times. Her mom had breast cancer, and then her dad, who was always like the easygoing of the two, dropped dead of a heart attack while he was caring for her. It was the first time I really ever had heard of that. So, like I said, I could forgive her abrasiveness every once in a while. That sort of like jar half empty kind of attitude about life. Well, we walked and, we talked about our parents and sisters and men or lack thereof. And she always had some interesting dates. I don't know. And we also talked about our friend Mimsy. She was Her given name was Miriam, and I'd known her since I was like 5 years old. We went to Sunday school together. We had our bat mitzvahs together. I was the maid of honor in her wedding, and I really had to forgive her too, because those luscious bridesmaid dresses, they were like hot pink gowns with this bib, white, that looked like a tuxedo with matching pink jacket. And she'd had her struggles, and of course we talked about those. She actually had an addiction to speed so bad that her heart gave out, but she was pretty lucky because she qualified for a transplant, and so she had quite the saga that we talked about. So basically, we talked about everything and everyone, and we lost track of time. And you also know how it is when you're walking in the forest. I mean, when you're silent, there's so much to see, and well, you got to watch out for protruding roots and snakes, and maybe be mindful of bears. But I always love, just the way, the sun kind of filters through the trees and the leaves. And I just love it when you can see it like a strange shaped mushroom, something like that on the forest floor. The wilderness is just kind of like that, if you pay attention. Well, at one point, both of us realized we were hungry. So we took out our apples, we ate as we walked. And then at one point during the hike, it started to rain, and it was really a welcome rain. And every once in a while, we'd also notice a few people here and there. And, it was kind of funny because, here we were in our like tennis shoes and shorts and t-shirts, and they were like, full backpacks and, major hiking boots. And one guy had a hatchet. I mean, it was just kind of weird. And, I guess maybe it was at that point I started getting a little worried. I mean, it was, getting a little, later in the day. I could see the sun was maybe, peeking in the sky over the trees, and my water bottle was getting a little low. And so I said, let's turn back. And she said, oh, no, why don't we just rest for a while and keep walking? I'm sure there'll be a logical break in the trees, and then we'll head back. And I guess I was a little shocked when, she leaned against the tree and pulled out a cigarette and started smoking. And I just remember her, the arms like this going, why are you so worried, my friends? Well, after that, our conversation kind of waned, but my inner monologue was more or less unleashed. I mean, I started thinking, what was I worried about? I mean, my husband, my daughter. I mean, were we lost? And I remember imagining, if I were an eagle, I would fly over these mountains. Oh, no, if I were a rabbit, I would scamper off this mountain. Oh no, if I were a sure-footed mountain deer, I wouldn't even need a trail. I wouldn't need a path to get off this mountain. I would make my own. Well, we walked and we walked. And after many, many hours, what really turned out to be about 7 hours, we did reach a break in the trees. And we found ourselves standing on the top of a mountain. Utility poles stretched down either side. It was like a road. And we really did not know what to do. Do we walk down to the right, or do we go to the left? I mean, if we turn back, it's going to be another 7+ hours. As we stood there, motionless, not knowing what to do, looking at both paths that looked, equally good, all of a sudden, we heard the rumble of gravel. And then, miraculously, out of a cloud of dust and dirt emerged a Jeep. Help, Lauren cried out. I'm a Yankee and I'm lost. Shut up, I elbowed her. Well, it turns out it was a forest ranger. I explained to him that we were kind of lost, that we'd been hiking for hours and we really didn't know where we were. Well, he said, oh, well, that's kind of weird. I mean, I just happened to come up here to check the power lines. Get in. Well, he drove us back to our car, and we were some 15 miles away. He explained to us that, well, ladies, you're pretty lucky. There have been some mysterious deaths on the trail in the past few months. Yeah, somebody with a hatchet. Well, we never made it to the discount mall that day, and after I dropped Lauren off at the airport, we didn't speak for quite a while after that. And I don't know if I was pregnant while I was on the hike or whether I came home and got pregnant. But some 9 months later, in March of 1993, my second child was born. We named him Ayal, Hebrew for a sure-footed mountain deer. And for those who know him, and for those who I hope will get a chance to meet him someday, how do I say this? He has always forged his own path, one with some switchbacks, and a life filled with adventure, all right. It's a journey that, well, I guess like for all of us, I figure, is filled with some heartache and hope and choices between competing possibilities. Standing on that proverbial mountaintop, maybe sometimes crying for help, and then stepping off, even into the uncertainty of where it will lead you, into and out of the wilderness.